Hello everyone, and welcome back to Relax History. Tonight, we're traveling more than 1,000 years into the past, to the rugged coastlines of Scandinavia, where towering mountains meet deep blue fjords, and the lives of ordinary Vikings quietly unfold beneath cold northern skies. When most people hear the word Viking, they imagine fierce warriors, towering longships, and legendary battles across distant seas. But those moments were only a small part of their story. For every Viking who sailed across the ocean, thousands remained at home, raising families, tending livestock, repairing fishing nets, building ships, telling stories around warm fires, and preparing for the long Scandinavian winters. Tonight, we'll spend an entire day living beside them. We'll wake inside a wooden longhouse as the first light reaches the fjords. Walk through quiet villages still covered in morning mist. Help prepare breakfast. Work beside blacksmiths and farmers. Sail across icy waters. Celebrate beneath the stars. And finally return home as another peaceful day comes to an end. So, settle in somewhere comfortable, take a slow, deep breath, and together, let's step back into the quiet world of the Viking Age. Long before the first voices echo across the village, the land is already awake. A cold breeze drifts quietly over the deep Norwegian fjords, carrying the scent of salt water, damp pine, and fresh earth. High above, the mountains remain wrapped in soft morning mist, beneath a sky slowly beginning to brighten. The sea is perfectly still. Gentle ripples spread across the dark water as small waves meet the rocky shoreline. Gulls circle overhead, calling into the silence, while somewhere deep within the surrounding forest, the faint tapping of a woodpecker breaks the quiet morning air. Scattered along the edge of the fjord stand several wooden longhouses. Their thick, turf-covered roofs blend naturally into the surrounding hills, making each home seem almost like part of the landscape itself. Thin streams of smoke begin rising from a few chimneys as the first cooking fires are carefully rekindled. Inside these homes, families are only just beginning to stir. Heavy wool blankets are folded away while glowing embers from the previous night's fire are gently coaxed back to life. The warmth spreads slowly through the longhouse, pushing back the cool Scandinavian morning that lingers outside. For the people who live here, mornings begin long before the sun climbs above the mountains. Every hour of daylight is valuable, especially during the short northern summers when fields must be planted, boats repaired, and food prepared for the long winter that always lies ahead. You might be surprised to learn archaeologists have discovered that many Viking farms were not isolated villages, but small communities connected by waterways that served as the fastest roads in Scandinavia. Boats were often far more useful than walking through dense forests or climbing steep mountain valleys. As the eastern sky slowly fills with golden light, the outlines of fishing boats become easier to see. They rest quietly against simple wooden docks, gently rising and falling with the tide. Before long, these boats will carry fishermen into the cold northern waters where the day's work will begin. For now, the village remains wonderfully peaceful. The smell of burning birch wood drifts through the crisp morning air. Dew clings to tall grass beside the shoreline. The only sounds are birds, distant water, and the soft crackle of newly awakened fires. As another ordinary day begins in the Viking Age, as daylight slowly spreads across the fjord, more doors begin to open. One by one, families step outside into the cool morning air. Some pause for a moment to watch the rising sun paint the mountains in shades of gold, while others quietly begin the first chores of the day without speaking a word. The ground is still damp with dew. Bare footsteps leave faint impressions in the grass as villagers walk between longhouses carrying wooden buckets and simple tools. The smell of smoke grows stronger with each passing minute, mixing with the crisp scent of pine carried down from the surrounding hills. Many of the day's first tasks revolve around animals. Sheep, goats, pigs, and cattle are carefully checked before they are let out to graze. Chickens scratch through the earth, searching for insects, while barking dogs eagerly follow their owners through the village, always alert for unfamiliar visitors. For Viking families, livestock are among their most valuable possessions. Cows provide milk for cheese and butter. Sheep supply warm wool for clothing, blankets, and sails. During the long Scandinavian winters, the health of these animals can mean the difference between comfort and hardship. Inside the longhouses, glowing embers have now become steady fires. Iron cooking pots are hung above the flames while fresh water is brought in from nearby streams or wells. Before breakfast can be prepared, nearly every member of the household has already completed several small but important jobs. You might be surprised to learn. Archaeologists have found that many Viking longhouses were built to shelter both people and valuable livestock during harsh winters. Keeping animals close provided additional warmth, while also protecting them from predators and severe weather. Children are already learning by watching the adults around them. There are few formal lessons, but every task becomes a chance to gain experience. A young child may carry kindling for the fire, gather eggs, or help feed the animals. Knowing these simple responsibilities will one day become second nature. As the village becomes fully awake, gentle conversations begin to replace the morning silence. The rhythmic sound of chopping wood echoes through the valley. A fisherman unties his boat from the dock. Somewhere in the distance, the first axe strikes fresh timber, signaling that another ordinary day is truly underway. Before anyone sets out to fish, farm, or trade, the heart of the home slowly comes alive. The Viking longhouse is far more than a place to sleep. It is a kitchen, workshop, dining hall, and shelter, all gathered beneath one sturdy roof, built to withstand the harsh Scandinavian climate. From the outside, the buildings appear simple. Thick wooden walls support heavy roofs covered with layers of birch bark and turf. During summer, grass often grows across the rooftops, helping the homes blend naturally into the surrounding hillsides while providing excellent insulation throughout the year. As you step through the doorway, your eyes need a moment to adjust. Sunlight enters only through the open doorway and a small smoke opening in the roof. Much of the room is softly lit by glowing embers dancing inside the central hearth. The air carries the comforting smell of burning birch and pine. Smoke slowly drifts upward before escaping through the roof, although some always lingers inside. To modern visitors, the room might seem smoky, but generations of Viking families grow accustomed to it from childhood. Long wooden benches line both sides of the house. During the day, they provide places to sit, repair clothing, carve wood, weave cloth, and share meals. At night, they become sleeping places covered with wool blankets, furs, and straw-filled bedding. Unlike modern homes, privacy is almost unknown. Several generations often share the same building. Grandparents, parents, children, and sometimes servants or hired workers all live together, spending nearly every hour within sight of one another. You might be surprised to learn, archaeologists have uncovered Viking longhouses measuring more than 70 meters in length. While many homes are smaller, the largest belong to powerful chieftains and serve not only as family residences, but also as gathering halls where guests, feasts, and important decisions shape the community. The central fire rarely goes out. Instead of starting a new fire every morning, families carefully preserve glowing embers overnight beneath layers of ash. With a little fresh wood and dry tinder, the fire quickly returns, providing warmth, light, and a place to cook every meal. Iron pots hang from adjustable hooks above the flames, allowing meals to cook slowly throughout the morning. Wooden bowls, carved spoons, woven baskets, and clay storage vessels are arranged neatly along the walls. Nearly every object inside the house has been made by hand, often by someone living under the very same roof. Around the edges of the room, spinning wheels and upright looms stand ready for another day's work. Producing cloth requires hundreds of hours of careful labor. Wool must be cleaned, spun into thread, woven into fabric, and finally sewn into clothing sturdy enough to survive years of hard use. Archaeologists have also discovered beautifully carved wooden chests, decorated bedposts, and finely crafted household tools, reminding us that Viking homes are not merely practical. Even ordinary families often surround themselves with objects made carefully enough to last for generations. As the fire burns steadily and the morning light grows brighter outside, the longhouse feels warm, safe, and alive. Soon, breakfast will be shared around the hearth, before every member of the household steps outside to begin another demanding day beneath the northern sky. With the fire now burning steadily, breakfast can finally begin. There is no rush. Outside, the village is already awake, but inside the longhouse, the family gathers around the warm hearth, enjoying one quiet moment together before the day's work carries everyone in different directions. Breakfast is simple, filling, and carefully prepared. Thick barley or oat porridge slowly cooks over the fire while fresh bread warms beside the glowing embers. Wooden bowls are passed from hand to hand, each one carved by skilled craftsmen using local timber gathered from nearby forests. Depending on the season, the meal may include dried fish caught during previous weeks, smoked lamb, goat's milk, butter, cheese, or wild berries preserved from summer. Nothing is wasted. Every ingredient has required weeks or even months of careful preparation before reaching the breakfast table. Fresh drinking water is available from nearby streams, but many adults also enjoy weak ale with their meals. Unlike the strong drinks often imagined today, everyday ale usually contains far less alcohol and is commonly brewed because it keeps longer than fresh water stored inside the home. Archaeologists have recovered carbonized barley, oats, rye, hazelnuts, apples, onions, peas, beans, and even traces of herbs from Viking settlements. These discoveries continue to reshape our understanding of what ordinary families actually ate throughout the year. You might be surprised to learn black pepper, cinnamon, and other exotic spices were incredibly rare in Viking Scandinavia, while a few luxury goods reached wealthy traders. Through vast trade networks stretching as far as the Byzantine Empire and the Islamic world, most families relied almost entirely on foods they produced themselves. Breakfast is also a time for planning. Fathers discuss repairs that need attention before winter. Mothers organize spinning, weaving, and food preparation. Older children are trusted with growing responsibilities, while younger brothers and sisters quietly listen, learning how the household works simply by being present. Although these meals appear modest, they provide the energy needed for long hours of physical work. Before the sun reaches its highest point, fishermen will already be far out on the fjord. Farmers will be working their fields, and craftsmen will have spent hours shaping wood, iron, leather, and wool. As the final bowls are emptied, the room slowly grows quieter. Benches scrape softly across the wooden floor as people stand. Cloaks are pulled over shoulders. Boots are tightened. One by one, the heavy wooden door opens, and another busy Viking day begins beyond the warmth of the longhouse. As the village slowly empties, narrow footpaths begin filling with people carrying wooden rakes, iron sickles, and woven baskets. The mountains remain quiet behind them as families walk together toward fields that have been worked by their ancestors for generations. Although history often remembers Vikings as fearless explorers and warriors, most spend the greater part of their lives as farmers. Their success depends not upon distant voyages, but upon healthy soil, favorable weather, and careful preparation for the long winters that define life in Scandinavia. The growing season is surprisingly short. Every warm day is precious. Barley, oats, and rye must be planted, tendered, and harvested before the first cold winds return from the north. There is little room for delay, and every member of the household contributes in some way. The earth is rocky and often difficult to work on. Farmers patiently remove stones from their fields year after year, building low stone walls that still stand across parts of Scandinavia today. These walls divide pastures, protect crops, and quietly mark the work of countless generations. You might be surprised to learn, archaeologists have discovered that Viking farmers improved their fields by spreading seaweed, animal manure, and other natural materials across the soil. These simple methods helped crops grow in landscapes where farming might otherwise have been impossible. Not every family grows enough food on its own. Good harvests are celebrated with relief, while poor seasons require neighbors to depend upon one another. Cooperation becomes just as valuable as hard work, especially in smaller communities where survival often depends upon shared effort. Children learn these lessons early. Older boys help guide oxen or gather hay, while girls often assist with milking animals, collecting IRBs, and caring for younger siblings. Skills are not taught inside classrooms. They are learned one careful season at a time. By late morning, the fields are alive with quiet activity. Wooden tools scrape against the earth. Sheep graze peacefully on nearby hillsides. A cool breeze carries the scent of wildflowers across the valley, while the distant sound of waves reminds everyone that the sea is never far away. For these families, success is measured by far more than wealth. A full storehouse of grain, healthy livestock, and enough food to carry everyone safely through winter are achievements worthy of enormous pride. Long before stories are written about Viking voyages, this quiet work is what truly sustains their world. As the sun climbs higher above the fjord, the rhythm of the village settles into its steady pace. Farmers continue their work beneath the open sky, unaware that centuries later, their ordinary lives would become just as fascinating as the adventures of the few who sailed beyond the horizon. While many villagers remain in the fields, others have already pushed their boats away from the shore. The calm waters of the fjord reflect the surrounding mountains like polished glass, disturbed only by the gentle movement of wooden oars dipping quietly beneath the surface. For generations, the sea has provided food, transportation, and opportunity. Nearly every coastal family depends upon the water in some way. Fish fill dinner tables throughout the year, while boats connect distant villages far more quickly than narrow forest paths ever could. Most fishing boats are surprisingly small, built from overlapping wooden planks fastened with iron rivets. They are light enough to be pulled onto shore after each journey. Their shallow draft allows them to travel easily through rivers, narrow inlets, and rocky coastlines that larger vessels cannot reach. The fishermen know these waters intimately. They understand where cod gather during colder months, when herring arrive in enormous schools, and how changing winds can transform a peaceful morning into a dangerous afternoon. Much of this knowledge is never written down. Instead, it is shared through generations of quiet experience. You might be surprised to learn archaeological excavations at Viking settlements have uncovered enormous quantities of fish bones, showing that seafood was a staple of everyday life. In some communities, dried fish even became an important trade good that could be stored for months and transported over great distances. Simple woven nets are lowered carefully into the water, while hooks carved from bone or forged from iron wait patiently beneath the surface. Seals occasionally appear between the rocks, and seabirds circle overhead, often revealing where schools of fish are gathering below. Not every journey is successful. Some mornings, the fishermen return with heavy baskets overflowing with fresh cod and herring. On other days, they come home with little more than stories of changing weather and distant whales surfacing beyond the mouth of the fjord. The boats themselves demand constant attention. Salt water, rough beaches, and changing weather slowly wear away even the finest craftsmanship. Every season brings fresh repairs as wooden planks are replaced. Tars are applied to protect the hull, and worn ropes are carefully braided by hand. As the sun climbs higher above the mountains, the fjord becomes busier. Fishing boats pass one another across the calm water while children wave from the shoreline. The steady rhythm of oars, seabirds, and gently breaking waves becomes just another familiar sound of everyday life. For the people living here, the sea is never something to fear alone. It is a trusted companion that feeds families, connects neighbors, and quietly shapes every season of the Viking year, long before it carries explorers across the North Atlantic. It simply provides another ordinary morning's work, leaving the shoreline behind. The sound of waves slowly fades into another familiar rhythm. The steady ringing of hammer against iron echoes through the village, joined by the scrape of carving knives and the scent of freshly cut pine. Everywhere you look, skilled hands are quietly shaping the world around them. Every Viking settlement depends upon its craftsmen. Without them, there are no sturdy homes, no fishing boats, no farming tools, and no warm woolen clothing. Their work rarely appears in famous stories, yet nearly every part of daily life begins in one of these simple workshops. The village blacksmith works beside an intensely hot charcoal fire. Using leather bellows, he forces fresh air into the glowing coals until the iron shines bright orange. Each careful strike of the hammer slowly transforms raw metal into axes, knives, nails, hinges, farming tools, and countless other necessities. Although Viking swords have become legendary, they are surprisingly uncommon. Most ordinary families rely instead on practical tools that serve them every single day. An iron axe may cut firewood in the morning, shape timber by afternoon, and help build a new home before winter arrives. You might be surprised to learn archaeologists have found that Viking swords were valuable enough to be passed down through generations or repaired repeatedly rather than replaced. Everyday tools, not weapons, filled most village workshops. Nearby, skilled shipwrights patiently shape long planks of oak and pine. Every board is carefully fitted to overlap the next, creating the famous clinker-built hulls that make Viking ships both remarkably strong and surprisingly flexible in rough northern seas. The smell of fresh wood fills the air as carpenters carve bowls, spoons, chests, sleds, and furniture using simple hand tools. Even ordinary household objects often display beautiful patterns, reminding us that practicality and craftsmanship are rarely separated in Viking society. Inside another longhouse, women sit beside upright looms, weaving thick wool into cloth. The rhythmic movement of wooden shuttles passes quietly back and forth hour after hour. Producing enough fabric for one family requires extraordinary patience, with spinning and weaving consuming hundreds of hours every year. Archaeologists have uncovered beautifully preserved combs carved from antler, delicate jewelry made from silver and bronze, colorful glass beads traded from distant lands, and finely decorated wooden objects. These discoveries reveal that Vikings valued beauty alongside usefulness, even in everyday possessions. By midday, the workshops are filled with steady movement. Sparks rise from glowing forges. Wood shavings gather across packed earth floors. Hammers ring through the valley while children watch experienced craftsmen at work, quietly learning skills that will one day become their own livelihood. While fields are tended and boats move quietly across the fjord, much of the village's daily rhythm is guided from within the home. Viking women oversee an extraordinary number of responsibilities, many of which are essential to the survival of every household. The day rarely slows. Bread must be baked, meals prepared, clothing repaired, wool spun into thread, and fresh water carried from nearby streams. Food is carefully preserved for the months ahead, while every corner of the longhouse demands constant attention throughout the changing seasons. Textile production is one of the most time-consuming tasks in Viking society. Before a single cloak can be worn, sheep must first be sheared. The wool is washed, combed, spun into yarn, woven on tall, upright looms, and finally sewn together by hand. Every finished garment represents hundreds of hours of patient work. Many women also care for dairy animals. Fresh milk is transformed into butter, cheese, and fermented products that can last far longer than milk alone. These preserved foods become especially important during the long winters, when fresh supplies are far more difficult to find. You might be surprised to learn archaeologists have discovered keys buried beside many Viking women. Historians believe these keys symbolized responsibility for the household, its food stores, valuable possessions, and the daily management of family life. Women are also skilled traders, healers, and craft workers. Knowledge of medicinal herbs, childbirth, food preservation, and textile production is passed carefully from one generation to the next. Much of this wisdom is never written down, yet it shapes everyday life for centuries. Children spend much of their day close to their mothers, grandparents, and older siblings. Rather than separate work from family life, young children simply grow up surrounded by it. They watch, imitate, and slowly become capable of taking on greater responsibilities themselves. Archaeological discoveries also suggest that some Viking women held considerable social influence. Wealthy graves containing jewelry, imported goods, and finely crafted household items remind us that their contributions extended well beyond the walls of the longhouse. As the afternoon continues, the quiet rhythm of spinning wheels, weaving looms, and everyday conversation fills the village. These sounds may seem ordinary, yet together they form the steady heartbeat of Viking society, allowing every other part of daily life to continue. Although history often celebrates explorers and warriors, it is impossible to imagine the Viking world without the countless women whose skill, patience, and labor quietly sustained every home beside the northern sea. By early afternoon, the village is filled with movement. Boats arrive, carrying visitors from neighboring settlements. while narrow woodland paths welcome travelers leading pack horses loaded with goods. For many families, today is more than another working day. It is an opportunity to trade. Most exchanges are surprisingly ordinary. A farmer may trade surplus grain for dried fish. A fisherman might exchange fresh cod for warm wool cloth. Leather, butter, carved bowls, iron tools, and handmade rope all move from one household to another, strengthening friendships as well as livelihoods. Not every village has a permanent marketplace. Instead, seasonal gatherings bring people together from across the surrounding region. Friends reunite, marriages are arranged, disputes are settled, and news travels almost as quickly as the goods themselves. As visitors arrive, the quiet village becomes filled with conversation. Different accents can be heard around the market. Children watch with wide eyes as unfamiliar faces unpack colorful fabrics. Polished amber, carved antler combs, and finely crafted jewelry, unlike anything produced in their own village. You might be surprised to learn archaeologists have discovered thousands of Arabic silver coins buried across Scandinavia. These remarkable finds reveal that Viking trade routes stretched far beyond northern Europe, reaching the Byzantine Empire, the Islamic world, and lands thousands of miles from home. Glass beads shimmer brilliantly beneath the afternoon sun, their colors imported through vast trading networks that connected continents. Silk, though rare and expensive, occasionally finds its way into the possessions of wealthy families, reminding us that even remote Scandinavian villages are linked to a surprisingly interconnected world. Despite these distant connections, most villagers are far more interested in practical necessities than luxury goods. A sturdy axe, healthy livestock, quality timber, or a dependable fishing net often holds far greater value than exotic treasures brought from across the sea. Trade is built upon trust as much as wealth. Reputations spread quickly between neighboring communities. Honest merchants are welcomed back year after year, while those who deceive others soon discover that news travels remarkably fast along the waterways of Scandinavia. As the afternoon slowly passes, deals are completed with handshakes, smiles, and quiet conversations. Boats begin filling once again with newly traded goods, ready to carry them across calm fjords toward distant farms and neighboring villages before evening arrives. Standing among the market stalls, it becomes clear that the Viking world is far larger than a single village. Through peaceful trade as much as exploration, ordinary families become connected to people, cultures, and ideas stretching across much of the known world. As the busiest hours of the afternoon begin to pass, the pace of the village softens. For the people living beside these northern fjords, the world is more than forests, mountains, and sea. Every landscape seems alive with meaning, woven together by stories that have been shared around countless fires for generations. The Vikings do not separate everyday life from their beliefs. The changing seasons, the arrival of storms, successful harvests, and safe voyages are all seen as closely connected to the gods and the unseen forces believed to shape the natural world. Many families quietly offer small gifts before important journeys, or at the beginning of the planting season. These offerings may be simple: a piece of bread, a carved object, or food placed respectfully within a sacred place. Such moments are rarely dramatic. Instead, they become gentle traditions repeated throughout life. Rather than gathering inside enormous stone temples, many Norse communities worship in sacred groves, open fields, or wooden buildings dedicated to the old gods. Towering oak trees, quiet springs, and unusual rock formations are often regarded with deep respect, their beauty inspiring both wonder and reverence. You might be surprised to learn archaeologists have uncovered small carved figures, amulets shaped like Thor's hammer, and evidence of ritual sites across Scandinavia. These discoveries suggest that everyday expressions of faith are often personal, woven quietly into ordinary life rather than reserved only for large ceremonies. Children grow up hearing stories of Odin's wisdom, Thor's strength, and Freya's beauty. These tales are not simply entertainment. They help explain courage, generosity, loyalty, and the mysteries of nature, becoming part of how each new generation understands the world around them. When travelers prepare for long voyages, they often hope for calm seas and favorable winds. Farmers wish for healthy harvests. Families pray that illness will pass and winter will remain merciful. Though the requests differ, they all share the same quiet hope that tomorrow will be kinder than today. The changing sky itself seems to tell stories. Clouds drift across towering mountains while ravens glide silently overhead. A sudden gust of wind through the pine trees or distant thunder rolling across the fjord remind everyone that nature is both beautiful and deeply powerful. Archaeologists continue discovering rune stones scattered across Scandinavia. Some honor loved ones who have died, while others commemorate remarkable journeys or important families. Carved carefully into stone, these inscriptions preserve ordinary memories that might otherwise have disappeared forever. As afternoon sunlight filters gently through the forests, the village grows peaceful once again. Daily work continues, but beneath every ordinary task lives a quiet sense of connection between people, the land they call home, and the stories that have shaped their world for centuries. As the afternoon slowly gives way to evening, people begin returning from the fields, forests, and shoreline. The village grows quieter once again as boats are pulled onto the beach, tools are carried home, and the final chores of the day are completed before darkness arrives. Inside the longhouses, cooking fires burn brightly once more. Iron pots hang above glowing embers while the rich aroma of slow-cooked stews fills the warm wooden rooms. Fresh fish, root vegetables, barley, onions, herbs, and preserved meats simmer together, creating simple meals that reward a full day of hard work. Unlike the great feasts described in heroic sagas, most evening meals are modest. Families gather closely around the hearth, passing wooden bowls from hand to hand while exchanging stories about the day's successes, changing weather, and tomorrow's plans. Children listen far more than they speak. They hear tales of distant voyagers, clever traders, difficult winters, and legendary ancestors whose names have been remembered for generations. Long before books become common, history survives because people continue telling these stories aloud. You might be surprised to learn many of the famous Norse myths we know today were passed down orally for centuries before they were finally written down in medieval Iceland. Around countless evening fires, storytelling became one of the most important ways knowledge survived. Outside, the village grows wonderfully peaceful. Smoke rises gently into the cool evening sky while sheep settle quietly inside their pens. Somewhere beyond the fields, a dog barks before everything returns to silence, except for the soft rustling of pine trees in the evening breeze. Inside the longhouse, skilled hands remain busy even after dinner. Clothing is repaired beside the fire. Wooden handles are carved for tomorrow's tools. Fishing nets are carefully mended, one knot at a time. Rest rarely means doing nothing. Instead, it simply brings slower, quieter work. The warm glow of the hearth flickers across carved wooden beams, blackened by decades of smoke. Shadows dance softly across the walls, while grandparents continue telling stories that children may one day repeat to families of their own. As the final bowls are emptied, conversation gradually becomes softer. The day's hardest work is finished. Outside, the sun slowly begins sinking toward the mountains, painting the calm waters of the fjord in brilliant shades of gold and deep orange. For a few peaceful moments, no one is thinking about distant voyages or legendary battles. They are simply enjoying the comfort of home, surrounded by family, warmth, and the quiet satisfaction that comes from another ordinary day well spent. As the afternoon quietly fades, long shadows begin stretching across the fields. The brilliant blue waters of the fjord slowly take on shades of gold and amber as the lowering sun slips toward the distant mountains. Another working day is gently coming to an end. One by one, fishermen guide their boats back toward the shoreline. Their oars move slowly through the calm water, leaving gentle ripples that spread across the glass-like surface. Along the beach, families wait patiently to help pull each boat safely onto the sand before nightfall. Across the village, the final chores are completed. Sheep and goats are guided back into their pens. Chickens settle quietly onto wooden perches, while cattle return from nearby pastures after another peaceful day of grazing beneath the northern sky. Wood is gathered for tomorrow's fires, fresh water is carried inside, and valuable tools are carefully stored away beneath shelter. These simple evening routines may seem ordinary, yet they ensure that the village will be ready when another sunrise arrives. You might be surprised to learn archaeologists have found evidence that many Viking settlements remained in the same favorable locations for generations. Protected harbors, fertile land, and reliable freshwater sources allowed families to build lasting communities that endured for centuries. The evening air grows noticeably cooler. A gentle breeze moves through the pine forests, carrying the scent of salt water, damp earth, and distant wood smoke across the quiet valley. Above the mountains, the sky slowly changes from brilliant blue to soft shades of pink, orange, and deep purple. Children finish their games and hurry home as parents call them inside for the evening. Dogs curl beside the warmth of familiar doorways while ravens settle high among the trees, their calls gradually disappearing into the fading light. The village now moves at a different pace. There is no urgency left in the day. Conversations become quieter. Footsteps grow slower. The steady sounds of hammers and saws have finally disappeared, replaced by little more than birdsong, gentle waves, and rustling leaves. Standing beside the fjord, it becomes easy to understand why generations of Viking families chose to remain here. Towering mountains protect the valley, forests provide timber and game, fertile fields offer food, and the sea quietly connects them to the wider world beyond the horizon. As the last rays of sunlight touch the highest mountain peaks, a peaceful stillness settles over the village. Soon, lanterns will begin glowing inside the longhouses, and another Scandinavian night will quietly unfold beneath a sky filled with stars. Night arrives slowly across the Scandinavian landscape. The final colors of sunset fade beyond the mountains, leaving the fjord bathed beneath soft blue twilight. One by one, the first stars begin appearing overhead, their reflections shimmering gently across the calm water below. Inside each longhouse, the fires burn lower than before. Families finish their final conversations of the day, before carefully spreading thick wool blankets and soft animal furs across the wooden sleeping benches. The warmth gathered by the hearth will carry them comfortably through another cool northern night. Outside, the village has grown wonderfully quiet. Fishing boats rest safely beside the shore, exactly where they were pulled from the water before sunset. Sheep and cattle sleep peacefully inside their shelters, while only the occasional call of a distant owl drifts across the valley. The sea itself seems almost perfectly still. Gentle waves touch the rocky shoreline with a slow, steady rhythm that has remained unchanged for countless generations. Somewhere beyond the darkness, waterfalls continue flowing from the mountains, their quiet voices blending with the evening breeze. You might be surprised to learn archaeologists continue discovering remarkably preserved Viking settlements buried beneath layers of earth, volcanic ash, and shifting landscapes. Every wooden beam, carved tool, and forgotten household object offers another small glimpse into lives that were once considered ordinary. Looking across the sleeping village, it becomes easier to remember that history is not built only by kings, famous warriors, or great battles. Most of the Viking Age belonged to farmers, fishermen, mothers, children, blacksmiths, weavers, traders, and countless ordinary people whose names have quietly disappeared with time. Tomorrow morning, these families will wake before sunrise once again. Fires will be stirred back to life. Boats will return to the water. Fields will welcome another day's work, and children will continue learning the skills that have been passed from one generation to the next for centuries. Although more than 1,000 years now separate us from the Viking Age, many of life's quiet rhythms remain wonderfully familiar. Sharing meals with family, taking pride in honest work, caring for children, watching the changing seasons, and finding comfort in returning home at the end of a long day. As the moon climbs higher above the fjord, the village disappears into peaceful silence. Smoke rises gently through the cool night air before fading into a sky untouched by cities or electric lights. Thousands of stars stretched from one horizon to the other, reflected perfectly upon the still water below. And somewhere beneath those same stars, the quiet Viking village rests until another dawn slowly returns across the mountains, just as it did this morning, and just as it has for countless generations. The fires continue glowing softly inside the longhouses, while outside, the village rests beneath a sky filled with countless stars. The mountains stand quietly over the fjord, just as they have for thousands of years, watching another ordinary day gently come to an end. By morning, the embers will be stirred back to life. Fishing boats will once again slip across the calm water before sunrise. Farmers will return to their fields, craftsmen to their workshops, and children will wake to another day of learning the rhythms that have shaped this place for generations. Although the Viking Age belongs to history, the quiet moments you've experienced today remind us that ordinary lives are often the foundation of extraordinary civilizations. Long before legends were written, there were simply families sharing meals, neighbors helping one another, and people finding comfort in returning home after an honest day's work. As the stars continue their silent journey across the Scandinavian sky, the gentle sound of water laps against the shore. The wind whispers through the pine trees, and the peaceful Viking village slowly disappears into the darkness until another dawn. Another season, and another ordinary day. If you enjoyed tonight's journey through history, and you'd like to explore more peaceful stories from the ancient world, we'd love to have you join us again here on Relax History. Until our next adventure, rest well, sleep peacefully, and thank you for spending part of your evening with us. Good night.